Hello and welcome to This Creative Life. My name is Heather Thomas and today we're here at the Portland Saturday Market. We're here in Portland, Oregon. It's nice and rainy out like it is in Portland, but we've got lots of customers here and lots of vendors here selling their artwork. This is the only outdoor year-long market of its kind here in the United States. It's been around for about 44 years. In fact, we've just started our 44th season. And we have over 250 artists who are here at any given time. We have booths that feature every type of medium you can imagine, from jewelry to ceramic artists to woodworkers to painters, just about everything you can think of in a fine arts and crafts market. This is a juried market, which means that anybody who wants to sell their work here has to go through a jurying process. They've got to bring their work in, and a jury of their artistic peers basically judges it to see if it's good enough to sell here, trying to keep the level of the products that we sell high. We also have a great food court, and we have live music, and it's kind of a scene here in Portland. And people come from all over the United States where they're here on vacation just to shop here. But what it really comes down to is the artists themselves. And we have some people who have been here for over 40 years. We have people who just got here this year. And we have people who are working in things that they love, and it really shows in the work. What we're going to do today is we're going to meet some of those artists. We're going to see kind of what makes their business tick and ask them some important questions about what it is to sell art in a market like this. So come join me and let's go see who we can introduce you to and what we can find out about the wonderful art that they make. Hi, and this is This Creative Life. We're back at the Portland Saturday Market and we're talking with Sherry Bingaman. And Sherry has been an artist here for a couple of years, and she works in quite a few different mediums. And I just kind of want to introduce her to you and allow you to see how she operates her business and the products that she sells and what her experience is like here at the market. So welcome, Sherry.
Glad to be here, Heather.
So first of all,
yes,
how long have you been an artist?
I've been a working artist almost 40 years.
That's a long time.
Yes.
And always in this medium, or?
Always in fiber. Pretty much fiber. Over the last couple of years, I kind of like to describe it more as color and texture. Still mostly in fiber, but the color and the texture are kind of what drive me to go where I go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, here at the market, this is like the only market that's like this really
yes.
in the world.
Yes.
And you get the opportunity to sell directly to your customer.
It's
Do you
great.
think that makes a difference?
Oh, I
do.
Yeah. Before I did the market, before I moved here to Portland, I did shows all over the country, and it was more once a year show. And I have always loved being able to meet the people who are interested in my work, and also to see what it is about my work that they find interesting. I mean, it's good both ways. I think the people like to meet the artist, and I think for the artist, it's extra fun information is to just see how they react, and you know, it's like a little nice experiment both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Now, when you say fiber and color and texture, you're one of the few people here at the market that sells this type of work. So yours is pretty unique. I mean, there's lots of jewelers and lots of woodworkers here, but you're kind of unique to the market. And you bring a mixture of art to wear and art for the wall.
Right.
Which do you really like making the most?
Well, me personally, as far as what satisfies me the most, I have to say, are my wall pieces. I think because there's less limitation on the design and where it can go. What I sell more of are what to wear, and I think that makes sense really because it's more individually personal and it's pretty unique, and so it's there's good things about each one, but I think the wall art is my most artistically satisfying work.
So you kind of find here that at the market you have to balance that desire to make the art that you want to make versus the art that sells?
Well, I think it's a delicate balance for any artist who wants to make, if not a full-time living, at least part-time or a generous living off their work, because we are part of the marketplace. So, and also to be true to your artistic self, you have to do. To me, I always make what I really like. Even when I'm doing commissions or special orders for people, I will tell them I'm working with you, but I will not do any kind of design or colors that I don't personally like just because it's not fun for me. If it's not fun for me, I don't want to do it. Now, I do want to make money, but I still want it to be fun for me.
Right.
So it is a real balance here because we get the locals and we also get the tourists. And what I find different about this market as opposed to shows I've done in other parts of the country is the heavy tourist months we have. You also have to think of they're either with flying, they have limited space, they have, and now, but a lot of people too, they offer to ship. So, but this market kind of hits it all.
Yeah.
It hits the gift, the personal, the tourist, the impulse, whatever.
Now, if you could tell somebody who was just about to start out their professional career as an artist, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's easy. Always go where your passion will take you. If you don't have the passion for it, it's not going to be artistically satisfying. It's not going to be your best work. It's just not going to be fun.
So basically, don't just make stuff because it's going to sell.
No. Number one, you don't know what's going to sell.
That's true.
And if it's always something that you really like, you will at least be pleased with it and maybe figure out a way to adapt it to make it sell. And plus, if you're going to be a working artist, it's so darn much work. People don't realize, it's so much work that you have to love it because there's parts you're still not going to like, but it's pieces of the puzzle you're going to need to make the business work. So I think your passion is the key.
Very good. Very good. So this is a really gorgeous piece, and it's kind of indicative of a lot of the things that you do. Why don't you kind of tell us about the process?
It is. Number one, I've been a weaver the longest. I started weaving 40 plus years ago, and it's just been a continuing thread through everything I do. It's part of why I like texture so much. It's the weaves, the different yarns, the fibers, and everything here is hand dyed by me.
Nice.
And being a wall piece, I feel the freedom to do whatever, and I included lots of different, this is some stiff felt, there's some hand spun, hand dyed yarns, there's some fabric that I've dyed. It's just a nice combination of just everything that makes me go, yum. I just love all the textures.
And is this done on a loom?
It's done on a loom, and it's actually done on a primitive loom, which I have a floor loom, I have a table loom, but I more and more like the primitive looms because of the simple weave structure. I'm not into very complicated weaves because I don't feel that they show off the fibers, the yarns, the materials, as well as a simple structure. So it's just a primitive loom, and very much all the handwork is me.
So, like you said earlier, for you, it's mostly about the color and the texture.
The color and the texture.
More so than doing really fancy specified designs on your loom.
Certain weaves. That's just, I leave that to machines, and it's just not my thing. I like the color. In fact, when I'm designing a piece, I start with what material, what elements do I want to combine, and I always have kind of a general idea of where I want to go, but I'm also very divergent as far as my designing. I kind of, as it goes and develops, I'm free to change as I go along.
And is your work one of a kind, or
yes.
do you do, okay, good.
It's all one of a kind.
Not really production work. You might make scarves over and over again,
right.
Each one's different.
Similar, right, they're all totally different.
Very cool, very cool. So again, you've been doing this for a very, very long time. Where do you think you're moving in the future?
That's part of the fun. It's just,
good.
I can look at all my work over the years and I can see the evolution. And maybe some more different textures. I've just added some copper enameling with the color. I think I'm happy with the color and the texture, and we'll see where that
Very
takes me.
good. Very good. All right, we'll go see who else we can meet here at the market. Welcome back to This Creative Life. We're now with Christy Lombard, and she's another artist here at the market. And she is either a ceramics artist or a potter. I'm not sure. We're going to find out. So, Christy, what do you consider yourself?
I actually consider myself a potter.
potter, okay.
Yeah, I guess, because I'm so rooted in function. So to me, a potter is somebody who makes functional work.
Okay.
Even though I've dabbled beyond that, but I'm mostly grounded in functional work. So.
Okay. Now, I always thought of a potter as somebody who throws pots on a wheel.
I
Is that
suppose.
something that you do? Or?
It's something that I know how to do. It's not what I do, though, with my work. I hand build everything. So all of my work starts out as a flat, what we call slab or sheet of clay when I get started. Mhm.
Okay, interesting. Well, how long have you been here at the market?
This is my 4th season.
Okay, cool. And do you have a regular spot here? Are you one of those vendors who likes to stay in the same spot, or do you move around like some of the other vendors do?
Well, this is my 1st season with a full regular, or not full, but a regular spot. So I'm very excited about that because I have been moving around in the past years and it gets difficult and you never know where you're going to be. And so it's really nice just knowing where I'm going to be in the morning, come here, set up, people know where to find me.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about
Very
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Now, do you have an education in the arts?
I do. I have a degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in ceramics.
In ceramics? Okay. So your education would say you're a ceramics artist.
I
but
suppose.
You decided you're a potter.
I guess.
Interesting.
There's so many words that are kind of, in my mind, sort of the same thing, but I realize that there are slight differences. I don't know. I guess when I think of ceramic artists, I guess I think more of sculptures,
Okay.
ceramic sculptures. That's just how I personally
So how long have you been
choose it.
doing this?
Actually, about 20 years, just because I got started in clay when I was very young. I actually got started in high school, good old public schools. And I never thought in a million years that I'd be doing this for a living. Even when I went off to college, I had no intention of studying art. No, not at all. I thought I was going to be a history major, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then as things progressed, I found that I just wasn't enjoying school like I usually do, and I realized it's because I wasn't doing anything creative. So, yeah.
Well, then that leads me to ask the
Okay.
question, then why art? What happened?
So I looked at my options as my 20-year-old self, and I loved like anthropology, I loved sociology, I loved art, and I just thought, to me at that time, they all seemed kind of similar in terms of finding careers down the road. And I thought, hardly anyone really uses their degree anyway, so I might as well study what I really enjoy. So, and then I made the leap, just full into
So here you are
art.
actually using your art degree.
Right,
Which
and
doesn't happen a lot.
I know, and the funny thing is that even right out of college, I was using it. Within a year, I was teaching, and of all of my friends, I was the only one using my degree, which is a fine arts degree,
that's
which,
interesting.
yeah,
That's
wasn't
very
something that most people would have thought.
So you said that you've taught. Do you still currently teach, or is that something that you did in your past?
I occasionally teach workshops. I used to teach regular classes, so weekly classes. I used to teach about 6 classes a week in both wheel throwing and hand building.
Okay.
But-
Because a lot of artists will supplement their income through teaching. And if you're not doing that anymore, I'm going to guess that you're finding some success here with your
Yeah,
products.
I think so. Yeah, I've been full-time just selling art for about, we're in 2017. So about 6 years now.
So 4 years at the market. So before that, were you mostly doing shows or gallery work?
Mostly shows, some gallery work, but predominantly traveling around just in the Pacific Northwest doing fine art shows.
And do you still do those while you have in between the market?
Yeah, occasionally. I've cut back a little bit on those and tried to do more market because it's closer to home, but I still do them, yeah.
So here's a kind of a personal question.
Okay.
Are you making a living?
I am.
Okay, that's really good. So if you're making a living as an artist, what would you say to a burgeoning artist who's thinking, I really like to make art. It would be fabulous if I could support myself making art, but everybody tells me, I'm going to end up being the starving artist.
Oh, I don't believe that. But I remember being that person. So I was a little different in my approach, that I was very more gradual. So I started out teaching, and selling on the side. And then I just kind of watched as sales continued to grow. I started stepping kind of away gradually from the teaching. But even I was really afraid to make the final leap. And I just remember talking to some other artists, and they're like, it always works. Like, you just have to figure it out, but it will always work out, and you just have to make the leap. And I finally did, and it really does. I mean, you have to be thoughtful. You can't just make anything and throw it out there and expect to be successful. You have to be willing to learn from what you've made, if it didn't work or how you can improve it. Listen to the customers to find out like what people are saying about it. Not in the sense that I feel like you need to alter what you make just so that it purely appeals to people,
Right.
but just kind of taking in the feedback that you're getting and evolving and learning and being willing to change to make it successful. But in the end, I still believe that things tend to work out. So if you put the energy into it, I think it will succeed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So as you're making the art that you sell here, are you feeding your soul more or feeding your pocketbook more? Or does it depend on the day?
It's kind of a little of both. I'm very lucky, I feel, that I have an aesthetic that seems to be very universally appealing. So I haven't felt the need to make work to cater to my audience. I make what I want to make. Does it feed my soul all the time? I'm not sure. I mean, I do produce quite a bit of work. And so when I make a lot of production, I wouldn't say it's always soul feeding, but I do try to fit in some one-of-a-kind pieces as well, which are more of that, like, getting lost in the making of the work and keeping me going. So it's kind of a little bit of both.
That takes me to that next question of how much of your work is one-of-a-kind versus production work.
Oh gosh, at this point it's probably 70-30, mostly
So 70%
production.
production?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I sneak in when I can those one-of-a-kind pieces. It's just that they take so much time.
Right.
And because I'm decently successful, I have to produce. So
exactly.
that's the nature of the beast a little
Exactly.
bit. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you kind of have it, your system worked out, your business model, it's working for you here at the market. And so what do you hope for next? What do you see happening next for you?
Life balance is always the goal. As far as work goes, I don't even know how to answer that. I'm pretty happy where I'm at right now. But if I could maybe drive more business from online sales and be able to get back a little more of my own personal time to where then I could invest it into more of those one-of-a-kind pieces,
Yeah.
that would be perfect. I don't know if that will happen or not, but that's always the goal. I'm constantly trying to shift things around to figure out what's the best fit for amount of time producing and selling, and then having still hopefully some time for life and making the things that make me happy. So
Well, a lot of people think when they look at an artist, they think, oh, that artist has all kinds of spare time, and they're just fiddle farting around in their studio every once in a while. But so how many hours are you
Oh my
putting
gosh.
in each week?
bare minimum, I would say that I put in 40, but I would definitely argue I go over that many, many times.
Now,
but
is that 40 just making plus your 2 days selling?
yes.
Or, okay, so you're really working about 60 hours a week every week.
Oh, no, sorry, excuse
Okay.
me. 40 hours, probably, well, let's see, 5, 25, maybe 45, 50.
Okay.
I work every day, but I don't always work 8 hours.
8 hours,
Yeah,
yeah.
sometimes I'll work 5 and sometimes I'll work 12. So it varies considerably, but I do work every day. I really don't have a
hard
day
job.
off.
It's
Yeah.
a hard job.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work in it. And so hopefully we love it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we love what we do. So, yeah, very
That's
good.
the perk.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So we're back with Christy, and hopefully she's going to kind of run us through how she does her artwork here at the market, because there are so many different artists and a lot of people working in the same mediums. We have to kind of find a way to really make our medium our own, and Christy has definitely done that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your process?
Okay. So these I call my ceramic wall pillows, and they're very fun for me to make. I get very excited about them. So can I lift it off to show you?
Absolutely.
So when I start, all of my work is made from what we call a slab of clay. So I run my clay through something that's kind of like, it looks like a giant pasta machine.
Okay.
And so it flattens the clay out into a thin slab, and I can control the thickness. And then, so I roll out a slab, and then for this part here, I actually carve out of clay, a clay cylinder. I carve kind of like a scroll, I guess you would call it. I call it a texture roller. So I carve those, bisque fire them so they're hard, and then I can roll them across that flat clay and get this texture that I want in here. And then I've designed a series of templates, patterns that I use to make the different size pieces. So I'll cut that out and then sort of gently shape the clay over a...
cut out of?
Oh, the template? Cereal boxes. I actually think that cereal and cracker boxes, the cardboard, is the perfect weight for templates because they're easily cut with scissors, but they hold their shape quite well. So that's what I use them for. And then after I've cut them out, I have a series of, we call them hump molds. They're just like a half round plaster mold. And I just sort of drape the shape I'm working with over that just to kind of round it. And then I fold it up. And so by folding it, I round those edges. And so it's all about knowing the timing of when the clay is flexible, but still firm enough that it's not just gonna collapse when you make that shape. And then the next thing I do is add the back. And so when clay is what we call an enclosed form, so in this case it's got the front and the back and there's no hole in it yet, it's quite strong. You can actually push against it and it will kind of push back. Once the hole is there, because once the hole is there, then the air can escape. So when you push in, it'll just concave. So then this piece here is a separate slab that I roll much thinner. And then it features one of my stamps, which I carve out of the soft block, like a linoleum block that's flexible. Yeah, something similar to that.
And do you use linoleum cutting
tools? I do, yeah. And so I come up with all my own original drawings, and I work on them on graph paper so I can draw them all to scale, and then I transfer them to the carving material, and then carve out the stamp. And then that's great because then I can reuse that stamp in a variety of different ways, but it's still my own personal design. So yeah, this is a thinner slab that I roll again through that same machine, press my stamp into it and then cut it out and then attach it to the top of the pillow. And so once that's all done, then I can cut out the hole for the back to hang it. So once it's all attached and I'm done pushing on it, we're good. And then it gets fired. So all ceramics, all clay goes through at least two firing processes. So the first one is what we call the bisque firing. So it basically goes through and it removes all of the water that was in the clay. So all of the molecular water, all of the water. And it goes through its first phase, which we call quartz inversion, where essentially it goes from being something that you could turn back into mud into something permanent.
This is with no color. So
correct. This is just the raw clay. And so then it comes out of the bisque fire, and that's when it's ready to get glazed. And so at that point it's absorbent, and so I can paint on glaze. And so the way I finish them for the glaze is I paint a black stain on here, and I take a sponge and I wipe it back, and it kind of, the best description word that most people are familiar with, it's like it antiques it. It sort of gives it that, and all the recessed areas pick up the black. And then I take a little tiny #1 brush and I drop glaze into each little recessed chamber to kind of add a little pop of color, and I like that juxtaposition of the shiny and the matte together. And then this glaze is brushed on. And then it gets fired again to about 2200 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's done. So that's it. Yeah.
Very cool. So all of your pieces feature all this wonderful texture, and that texture is derived by either a plate that you've made that you can roll, and that's made out of clay,
right,
or basically a stamp that you've carved, just like a person would use for woodblock stamp or a linoleum carving.
Sure.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that way it makes it all very personal to me, which is very important to me. I want things to be original. So
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Being on this Creative Life with us.
Help me, I think I'm falling. All I need is just a little breeze to cool me down. Help me, I think I'm falling.
I am the sole owner, only employee of the business Wild Heather Design. I consider myself a metalsmith who happens to make jewelry. And I think of metalsmith because mostly I'm playing with the alchemy of metal and what I can get it to do, how I can manipulate it and melt it and shape it and form it and texturize it and color it. And I don't do fine jewelry, I do kind of high-end, lowbrow jewelry, if you will. I've been doing jewelry for just about 2 years and have been an artist for about 30 years. Before this, I worked in a different medium and was really enthralled by the idea that I could take what I knew from my mixed media art form before and bring it right into jewelry. Learn basically the system around making jewelry and working with heat and metal, and use the same information I knew about composition, color, line, shape, form, all those things. It all is the same. So here I am selling my work at the Portland Saturday Market. I've been an artist here for about 2.5 years, and really enjoying the opportunity of selling my work directly to the customer. This is something that a lot of artists rarely have the opportunity to do. And unless you're doing shows constantly, which requires a lot of travel and a lot of signing up for and waiting to find out, a market like this is probably the only way that you're going to be able to do that. It's kind of like a giant co-op. And each of us has the opportunity to come in here and build relationships with customers, which I find to be one of the best parts about selling at a place like this. So anyway, I make jewelry and I use a mixture of metals. This line that's right behind me is probably my favorite line. I call it Alchemy. And it's called Alchemy, again, because of the fact that I'm getting to push the metal to the limit. I'm asking it to do stuff it's not used to doing, melting it almost to the point of liquid and then bringing it back again. Just doing really funky things with it. I like to use a mixture of metals. I've got mostly sterling silver, but I also use some 14 karat gold, rose gold, copper, brass, and a little bit of bronze. And everything that I do is a one of a kind. I don't do any production work. I like to keep it so that each customer knows when they walk out of here, they're walking out with a piece of jewelry that nobody else is ever going to wear. So that's kind of what I do. I make jewelry, and then if I'm lucky, people come to my booth and they really want it and they think it's going to enhance their life, they purchase it, and then I get to make more jewelry, which is really kind of cool. Welcome back to This Creative Life, and we're with Thomas Rude, and he is a woodblock artist or a block printing artist, depending on how you want to look at it. Also a member here at the Portland Saturday Market, has been here for a while, kind of one of the people who've been here longer than the norm. And he does wonderful prints done from carved blocks, and he prints on paper and does some really amazing and unusual work. He is one of the only artists, he may be the only artist doing this here at the market, which kind of gives him a nice edge. So welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
Now, you've been here for what, 15 or 16 years?
This is actually my 17th year.
17th year.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you do other shows and things like that too, or just the market?
Well, I don't travel much for shows anymore. I did Art in the Pearl for 10 years in a row, and I just haven't gotten in the last couple of years, but it's such a handy show because it's right in town and everything, yeah.
So you're mostly here at the market then?
Right.
And is this your only career? Have you always been an artist, or did you used to do something else?
I've always been pretty much a full-time artist, but I've done things like wait tables, and I've had part-time jobs, and then when I moved to Portland, this became my part-time job, more or less.
Okay.
And I was in a gallery for 10 years in the Pearl District, Waterstone Gallery, which is an artist-owned gallery. I left there a couple years ago, and I have work also at the Portland Art Museum Gallery.
Okay.
And I do gallery shows here and there, like group shows and that sort of thing, yeah.
Now, always in this medium, or are you still working in other mediums?
Well, I work in, I do wood sculpture as well.
Okay.
And I just don't bring it down here because I don't like schlepping it around. It's usually pretty fragile, it's moving parts, and it's very expensive, so it's not the greatest thing for this venue. I might sell it at some point, but in the meantime, I'm trying to keep it from getting broken, and you know what I mean. So I just use other venues for.
So you're lucky that you have the opportunity to create art that you know is going to sell in this type of a market.
Right.
And
exactly.
so you're sort of pandering to the customer, but at the same time doing stuff that you really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always following a thread, more or less. There's something going on. Like I did a whole series of skeletons at one point. I was an emergency medical technician at the time, And I've always got something going on, and then every once in a while an idea pops into my mind, and then I start working on a drawing, and it's just following something that, I don't draw from life or anything like that. Everything's coming from in here, from dreams or whatever, anything that I can, that seems meaningful. And if I get an idea, I just let it sit for a while and see if it stays strong.
Yeah.
And if it stays strong, then I will start doing a drawing and still paying attention to whether it seems like something worth doing that I really have to do, more or less.
And this is because your process takes a very long time. And it's
That's it, yeah.
painstaking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I have to do a drawing, and then I transfer the drawing onto the block, and then I have to carve the block, and so I do a lot of practicing. I come to a part I'm not sure about, I go to another piece of linoleum and I carve it in that other piece of linoleum.
Interesting.
And try it out and see if I can do it and how to do it.
Now, would you say that's because you're a perfectionist or because the media itself kind of requires this precision?
The media requires it. I never thought of practicing until about 5 years ago. But you can't make a mistake. You have one chance. So that's why I try it somewhere else first and get it figured out, Like doing the little white dot and the pupil of an eye. There's this one tool I use where I actually spin the block around holding the tool there, and every time I actually succeed in getting the white little pupil, I just feel lucky that I did it, because it can kind of go askew.
Now, what would happen if it were to go askew? Would you just kind of throw out that block and start over again, or would you just say, okay, I meant to do that, and kind of move on?
I don't know. It would be each thing is particular to that piece, but I've always managed to do it. I feel like I get help from somewhere or something, because when I'm practicing, some of them work and some of them don't. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
But I don't know. Maybe I just put everything into it, that one time or something. But if there's sometimes I can make a little mistake and then maybe work it into the design somehow or something like that. But usually I just don't make a mistake. I'm working under a magnifier.
Wow.
I'm pushing with one hand, but I'm pulling with the other. People are always talking about, oh, I cut myself this time or that time. I couldn't possibly cut myself because I'm like that. I'm pushing and pulling back both. So it's just super control, and I gotta psych myself up, and then I get into the magnifier and I'm just like, just
So that's how you get all your
control.
wonderful fine lines.
Right, yeah.
Very good, very good.
But I just have the personality for it too, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So do you do all of your own printing, or do you make a master print and then have prints made of that? I mean, is your work one of a kind, or is it production work?
Well, mostly what I'm selling here is reproductions, laser prints onto cardstock of the originals. And now this is an original, and the originals are, they're all a numbered edition. They're all printed by hand by burnishing the back of the paper once it's on the ink block. And so each print is considered an original in that edition.
Right.
And so I bring some originals, but they're more expensive, so I bring mostly reproductions, like these are all reproductions. So I bring those because it's more the price range for the Saturday market.
Okay, and so I see that this one is numbered 31 out of 50.
Right.
Is 50 about the average that you do for originals?
A lot of them are 50. I did a number of them 30s, and I've sold out on quite a few editions actually. But I don't print up the whole edition. Because I don't have room. I've got like 75 different editions going.
Wow.
So I print a cup. I can only print one often before the block is a little filled in, and I have to wash it and wait. So I just do maybe one or two, and then I have records of for all my editions and what I've printed. And so each time I write it in there what I've printed.
Very good.
Otherwise, I'd have just piles of prints laying around.
Exactly.
And some editions sell really well, and some don't.
Have
And
you
so,
ever taken a break with one and not sold it for a year or two, and then brought it back and found it to be very popular?
I mean, even when they're out, even when they're always available, I'll have a print. Just everybody kind of look at it and scratch their head for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden everybody's going, oh, you know, like noticing it like it's new. So I don't know how it all works.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard knowing the customer.
Right,
And
yeah.
you kind of have to, at a market like this, you have to kind of wait for your customer to show up.
That's it.
Yeah, you're waiting
Yeah.
for your customer to show up, because not everybody that walks into your booth
Right.
is actually your customer. They're
And
just
it's imagery, so that's all it is. It's if you want this to hang on your wall, you would connect with it, but it's not a T-shirt. It's not any. You can't rationalize buying it for a practical reason. In
Now,
other words,
a lot of people would say, "Why don't you put your designs on a T-shirt? Why, you know,
Right.
you've never done that?"
well, I have. I've done that.
Okay.
I've done a lot of T-shirts, but the thing with T-shirts is you have to have all the sizes and the
Right.
colors, and so you really kind of have to get into T-shirts. I probably have to use half of my booth
Exactly.
with T-shirt kind of things, and I'd have to get into screen printing, which is another process and another space. I'm already doing wood sculpture, and I'm doing,
Yeah,
and they
so
have
you're
to be
busy.
separate because you know, because the printmaking is very clean. You can't have any specks of dirt, and then the wood sculpture and sanding, that's all messy.
Right. Right.
So another process is, you know, I don't want.
Right. Exactly. I understand. Well, thank you for giving this kind of bird's eye view of what you
Sure,
do.
yeah.
And in a minute, we'll have you give us some more information about your actual process.
Okay, sure.
So I'm back with Thomas Rude, and he's going to tell us a little bit more in-depth information about this process that he does of block carving. So I see that you have some linoleum in your hands.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about the product and how you go about getting this image?
Sure. Well, I first get to do a drawing. If I have an idea, I do a drawing, and then I do the drawing on tracing paper, so I can turn it over backwards and still see my drawing, because when you print, you get a mirror image.
Right.
So you have to carve a mirror image of what you want the print to be. So I put the drawing backwards on top of the linoleum, tape it on one edge, and then first I color the whole thing black with a black felt tip pen, so that when I start carving, I'll see the contrast of the lighter color
So
in contrast with the
coloring
dark.
the surface of the linoleum black.
Right.
Okay.
And then I put the pattern taped on the one edge, and I slip a white transfer paper under there, and I go over all my lines with a ballpoint pen, transfer the lines onto the block, and now I'm ready to carve. And so then I get out my magnifier, which is clamped to my table. I have a magnifier with a light in it and another big light, and I put on my extra strong glasses and start carving. Oh, it has to be warm, so I just put the light down over it for a while. It's much easier to carve when it's warm.
Right.
And then I start carving very carefully, and hopefully,
So you've got some very fine lines here, and
Right.
what you've carved away is what is going to be the background color, correct?
exactly.
And what's left
Yeah,
behind is
that's
what's
a good
going to be your
point.
black.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, everything I carve away will be white, and everything I leave I don't touch. So it's in a way opposite of drawing.
Right.
You're not drawing a line, you're clearing away everything around the line and leaving the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you print now at this point, so you've got your plate. When you print, are you printing on a printing press?
No.
Do you have a press?
I print by hand,
Okay.
which means I ink the block. Most of my blocks actually are thicker.
Okay.
There's linoleum mounted to particle board like that.
Okay.
And so I ink the block, I pick it up by the edges and set it on the paper. This is Reeves lightweight, is mostly what I use. It's an archival paper. And then it's sticky ink, so
Okay.
I've rolled the ink and put it on the block. It's sticky ink, so when I turn it back over it, I hold it with my hand, it pretty much sticks to the ink. And then I use various bearings, they're called. One has little ball bearings in it, and there's a couple different ones. And I use a spoon, like just a regular soup
brain.
spoon. And I'm basically burnishing the back. But in order to not get too much ink, and if you get too much ink, it fills in the cracks.
And you have to define lines.
I under ink the block. I burnish the back of the paper. Then I pull one side back and sort of hold it with my other hand, and add a little more ink to that one half of the block.
Interesting.
I under ink it so I don't get too much ink. Put it down, burnish it, turn it around, lift the other side up, add a little more ink, put it down, burnish it, pick it up and look at it. Other printmakers always say, how do you do that without just messing the whole thing up? And it's just like practice, you know. So that way I bring, little by little, I bring the ink level up to the right amount. And then I peel it off of the block and hang it up to dry for a couple days. Just on I have just like a clothesline and
What
clothespin.
kind of ink is this? What is there?
I use a archival Speedball ink.
Okay. And always black?
Pretty much. Once in a while I do something in color, but
Well, I see this one here, which is all black on your natural
Right.
or white paper. But here we've got some red in there,
Right.
and then here we've got lots of colors. So tell me about how the color gets added in.
well, with this one, I did one. The original size of this is 12 by 18, so it's a big print.
Okay.
I hand colored one using watercolors, or not, but thinned out acrylics. And then I made copies of it. So these are laser prints. And then on this one, I superimposed the image of the print over the top of this red lettering, which is the definition of heart and the definition of love, from like a 43 dictionary. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you found ways to bring color into your otherwise high contrast black and
Right.
white.
But I'm
Very
very,
cool.
I don't use color unless I really want to. Like I use gold leaf in some of them,
Okay.
and they're designed to have gold leaf. But the thing is, if you put color in something, you don't have black and white anymore.
Right.
And so I only do it if it really draws me to do it. I don't think, well, if I colored this, then maybe more people would buy it or something like that. I just don't. I want it very particular about how.
There's a
Yeah.
style that's kind of the acceptable style for block prints, and usually it is that high contrast.
Right. Yeah. And also, when you're carving an image, you either have black or white. You have no gray, because it's either there or not there. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're very easy to reproduce because it's always, the separation between everything.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having
Sure.
us here. And I
Thanks
hope,
for having me.
You enjoy this creative life, and I hope you enjoy this creative life.